I fainted during my pregnancy announcement, and my husband accused the man who caught me. Nolan questioned everything, every text on my phone, every late night at work, every male name that came up in conversation. He would ask casually, but I learned to recognize the edge underneath. Who's that? How do you know him? Why is he messaging you? I spent 3 years tiptoeing around his insecurity, deleting innocent conversations just to avoid the interrogation, declining lunch invitations from coworkers because it wasn't worth the fight. My therapist said it was controlling behavior. My sister called it emotional abuse. But Nolan always had a justification. His ex had cheated. His father had left. He just loved me so much that the thought of losing me made him crazy. I told myself that love looked different for different people. I told myself that his jealousy meant I mattered. I believed it right up until the moment he accused a stranger of trying to steal me while I was literally unconscious. We planned the pregnancy announcement for his mother's birthday party. 60 guests, backyard barbecue, the whole extended family. I was 8 weeks along and barely showing, but my body was already struggling. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Exhaustion that hit me like a truck by noon. Dizziness every time I stood up too fast. Nolan knew I wasn't feeling great, but he insisted we couldn't miss this opportunity. His mother had been asking about grandchildren for years. This would be the perfect surprise. I agreed because I wanted it to be special too. I spent an hour on my makeup, wore a flowy dress that hid my bloated stomach, and practiced my smile in the mirror. I didn't eat anything because I was afraid I'd throw up during the announcement. Looking back, that was a terrible decision. We arrived at his parents' house around 3 p.m., and I felt wrong from the moment I stepped out of the car. The announcement was supposed to happen after the cake. Nolan had coordinated with his sister to get everyone's attention. Then we'd share the news together. But by 4 p.m., I was struggling to stay upright. The heat was brutal, and I hadn't eaten in 12 hours. My vision kept going fuzzy at the edges. I told Nolan I needed to sit down. He said just a few more minutes. His aunt wanted to talk to us. I told him I really didn't feel well. He squeezed my arm a little too tight and said, "Don't ruin this." So I stood there smiling while my body screamed at me to stop. His sister clinked a glass. Everyone gathered around. Nolan put his arm around me and started the speech about how blessed we felt, how excited we were to share something special. I opened my mouth to say the words we rehearsed. Then everything went black. I collapsed without warning, but I didn't hit the ground. Someone caught me. I found out later it was his cousin's friend, a guy named Trevor, who happened to be standing right behind me and reacted fast enough to grab me before I cracked my head on the patio. He lowered me gently to the ground while people screamed and scattered. Someone ran for water. Someone else called 911. Trevor stayed with me, keeping my head elevated, telling people to give me space. He was a nurse, actually, home for the weekend visiting family. He knew exactly what to do. By the time I regained consciousness, paramedics were pulling into the driveway, and Trevor was explaining that I was pregnant and probably hypoglycemic. He had checked my pulse, monitored my breathing, done everything right, and Nolan was standing 10 feet away, not helping, just staring at Trevor with a look I knew too well. The first thing Nolan said when I opened my eyes was, "Not are you okay, or thank God you're awake." He pointed at Trevor and said, "Why are your hands on my wife?" I was still on the ground, still dizzy, still trying to understand what had happened, and my husband was starting a confrontation with the man who had caught me mid-fall. Trevor tried to explain that he was just helping, that he was a medical professional, that someone needed to support me until paramedics arrived. Nolan got in his face. "I don't care what you are. You don't touch her." His cousin stepped between them, telling Nolan to calm down. Nolan shoved him, then chaos. People yelling, someone grabbing Nolan's arm, his mother crying. Me, still on the ground, watching my husband care more about another man's hands on me than the fact that I had just collapsed carrying his child. The paramedics loaded me into the ambulance while Nolan argued with family members in the driveway. He didn't ride with me. He was too busy defending his territory. At the hospital, they confirmed I was severely dehydrated and my blood sugar had crashed. They gave me fluids and monitored the baby, who was fine. Just a mother who had pushed herself too hard trying to please a man who didn't deserve it. Nolan showed up an hour later, still angry, still fixated on Trevor. He accused me of knowing him beforehand, of planning some kind of scene for attention, of flirting with other men while pregnant with his baby. I lay in that hospital bed with an IV in my arm and realized I was about to bring a child into a marriage with a man who saw threats everywhere except in himself. I told him to leave. He refused. I called the nurse and asked for security. They removed him while he shouted that I was making him look crazy. 2 days later, I moved in with my sister. I filed for divorce before the first trimester ended.